Hi everyone, and welcome to the Brownian Notion. I'm Gogol.
And I'm Ananya.
Joining us today is our producer, lovely producer Bana.
Yay. Hello, everybody.
And hippity hop, I'll never be a millionaire. Whoa, boom, boom, and hippity zoom. I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love.
What are we talking about today?
The idea was when we released our episode about the COVID time podcastination, we did talk a little bit about mental health, but a lot of you guys reached out to us and said, why not a bit more? Why not go a bit more into the details of how we dealt with our mental health, what happened, how did it affect us, and so on. So, like you said, that things are very anxiety provoking and so many different things changing all around you while there are certain things that are not. So, the topic for today is basically where we kind of left off with our episode COVID time podcastination, I think it was called. So I think this episode is meant to be a continuation after that and discuss how we have dealt with this pandemic, this raging pandemic that we are still dealing with even after 2 years. So let me ask you this, Bana, how are you feeling?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question because I'm doing very weird, but it's kind of expected in this time of the year. So I usually have quite a drop in my mental health status during winter. So January and February are really hard months for me. But I already expect this, so I have my strategies to deal with that involved sleeping a lot. So today I may even be a bit slow and sleepy. It's just, I don't know, it's just winter is especially hard for me. Do you feel the same?
In USA at least, November, December is basically when your productivity is going to drop and no one questions you about it. And so you're in this holiday mood, party mood. Usually I go home in December, which has not happened in the last 3 years. But January and February, yes. Now that you mention it, in fact, I was slyly Googling statistics on the side. I didn't find anything yet. That January, February is just awful for me. What about you, Deba?
Yeah, same. It gets quite hard when there is no sunshine and it's gloomy all the time. But also, in general, this time I do tend to go somewhere, travel, and do something.
We are all saying we feel low, but how has it been different for you guys since 2020? Because for me, the feeling of low has also been very different. Like, yes, we feel low during the new year, and that happens, and we get over it after a while when the seasons change. But it has been particularly bad since 2020. And I think Omicron kind of made it worse because my family got sick, and I was like, I cannot take any more anxiety right now. My mind will literally like just blow up into 1,000 pieces if I am any more stressed than I already am with the move and stuff. But keeping that special circumstance aside, I just feel like it has been harder to manage mental health since 2020 because we don't see an end. That's the problem.
Yeah, totally. So the thing is, what has really changed was that for a lot of us, we kind of avoided a lot of difficult questions, I think, by choosing easier things to deal with. So a lot of times, whenever we would feel sad or lonely being alone, being on our own, we would just go out and meet people. And this has become very difficult right now. So in a way, I feel that it might be a boon that we have to sit with our feelings, face our own demons, whatever you want to call it. But in a way, it might be a good thing. I mean, we would see what it does on a long term basis. But on a day to day basis, at least, it is much more difficult because you are not seeing your colleagues. Even if I want to go to the office, I cannot because there is just a limitation on how many people can go. So
Oh,
you have to reserve from beforehand, and then it's not the usual guys that I spend my time with. I think that is the reason why things have been much more difficult. Plus, the fact that there is very little to look forward to because it's very difficult to plan anything anymore.
right, right.
You plan something, but there is always a huge footnote, conditions applied, which says, yeah, based upon what is the COVID situation at that point.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is particularly challenging when we want to visit friends or family, right? Because,
Yeah.
for example, me
Mhm.
and Deba, at least twice, we were planning to visit some good friends of ours. And the last minute, we had to like cancel because the COVID cases in their country were rising, and it's just really exhausting to be always in this mood that maybe, we can do it, maybe not. And
Yeah, and I feel like with COVID, it's like you forget long term travel or long distance travel, even short distance travel is becoming difficult.
Yeah, totally.
I feel you guys can go to other countries a little more easily. Here, USA itself is like
Yeah.
humongous, but for us, because different states are handling COVID differently, it's hard to make a decision to travel.
It's the same in Europe actually, and it's a mess.
Yeah,
The thing is, I wanted to also mention one thing, that I was already dealing with some mental health issues before COVID, but COVID kind of pushed me over the edge.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I exactly remember the time, and I want to share that. And I would ask you guys to come in
Mm-hmm.
if you have similar experiences, or something that reminds. So I remember last year when the Delta wave was raging in India, I was actually stuck in India. And at that point, people around me, they were like not only getting infected, but they were dying.
Yeah.
Like I remember in a span of 1 week, there was two of my extended family members who just passed away, and we couldn't even go attend their funerals or attend their
Mm-hmm.
last services because we were just so afraid. And I was so afraid of my parents that I couldn't go anywhere. So I was just stuck there with my parents. That is also one part of the mental health, that I haven't lived with them for so long, and it was really challenging to live with them in a tiny apartment for 3 months almost. But the other part was that it was just so dehumanizing,
Mm-hmm.
that people become numbers, and you just know that there's a 50% chance, if somebody who is elderly in your family gets infected, that person might
Hmm.
pass away, and you might not be able to even see that person. And that kind of pushed me over the edge. I don't know, Bana, if you remember or not, there was one evening where you
yeah,
messaged me and I was like, I need to talk to you. And then I called you up and I cried.
yeah,
I literally, I couldn't
yeah,
deal with it anymore. All of the stimulus that I was getting, all of the news, all of the, I just couldn't take it anymore at that point. And I just felt like that this has to stop. This barrage of bad news, of like, I don't know, terrible things happening. It has to stop. I can't deal with it anymore. I was just totally overwhelmed. So I think that really pushed me over the edge a little bit. And even though I recovered from that phase, I never really got back to my usual self. I still have that anxiety kind of in the back of my head. So, yeah, I would like to ask you both if you had something similar, or one point where you thought, okay, this is too much for me to take as a human being.
yeah, definitely. So I can share my point of views. So it's kind of interesting because you were saying that COVID somehow then forced you to face, things that you're already struggling with, right? So for
Yeah.
me, it was not really the COVID, but it somehow had an overlap with the phase where I already wanted to actually face these, right? So for a bit of context, so COVID started in 2020. So at the end of 2019, I was finishing my first year of PhD, and I was starting to wondering like whether I should continue. There was many things about my work environment that I didn't really like. I was having struggles to transition from having my friends from my master to, I know, making new friends in the PhD program. So there was a lot of things that was making me feel, I don't know, disconnected and really unsatisfied with my life at that point.
Mhm.
So when the 2020 was starting, I was like, okay, Anna, you have 1 year to give this PhD a chance. And I come up with like 3 things I wanted to do so that I could do to try to improve my situation. Like for example, so most of the people I was working with were not physically in the same place where I was. So I was like, okay, so I will try to go and meet with them in their office, although it's in a different part of city. I will be this proactive, I will go and sit with them instead of calling, before COVID, of course. And I was thinking more like I will be more outgoing and trying to connect more with my peers in
Mhm.
my PhD program and
Mhm.
all of this. And I was really pumped. I was so like, okay, I'm going to do this. I got this. I get 1 year. Everything is going to be okay. And then March comes. And then it's like all this plan I had in my head, none of this works, right? Because suddenly I cannot meet with anybody. So basically, I'm left with the original problem I had
Right,
before
right.
with my struggles with my doctoral studies and a much huger problem. So if I thought I was bad in 2019, right? So then 2020, yeah, you can always get worse, I guess. I struggled a lot the first month, so during March, because I worked hard to make a very explicit split in my life. So I would work in the office and I would relax at home. So then I was at home and I could not neither work nor relax, because my brain was super confused and I was getting super frustrated. I was worried
Mm,
with my parents. I could not travel to Portugal. So I was completely overwhelmed without knowing what to expect, and I just shut down. I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything. So for me the moment was right at the beginning, and then it was really hard in one aspect, because every time I would tell this to my friends, to my closest friends, they would tell me like, oh no, for me it's like the best time, I don't need to, like, I can stay at home, that's amazing, right? And I was like, dude, I'm sharing that I'm struggling, and you are basically telling me that's all in my head, or that's not a big deal because I'm totally like flourishing. And this happened with, I think, everybody I shared this, like a handful of people. So you are like struggling, and then all these people around you are telling you, oh no, it's actually not a big problem. I was like, what made things somehow worse, right? Because I think during that month, I felt extremely isolated.
yeah. I think I was also one of those people. Initially, I really loved it. I mean, I think the point is, I really needed that space. The space that was kind of forced upon us. I really needed that space from myself that I never gave myself the chance to take. So I would always make some plans one after the other so that I'm always busy, I'm always doing something. So it was very difficult for me to actually disconnect from everything, where it is okay to stay in your room for 1 month and really not go out. And so, to be honest, that was very good for me. When it really became very difficult for me was when I couldn't see any way to plan for the future anymore. Anyway, Ananya, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, so for me, it was different. I think I mentioned in the previous episode that nothing changed for me, and that was scary because I was reading about people dying in 2020, and I was made essential in my building. So we just had a lockdown of barely 2 months, not even. And all of my coworkers, which is like five of them, I don't have a lot of coworkers in the lab, everyone just went home, and I had to come every day, and I saw my boss is there. So it was just very strange. Like, we don't have a lot of population here compared to India and other places. It was just very, very empty, and you're reading all this news, and almost it feels like watching a Black Mirror episode, because for you nothing has changed. You just have to wear a mask and go to work.
Right,
That's it. Yeah, slowly people started coming back and all of that happened, but for me, for a while, after not being able to see family or friends for nearly 3 years, I feel like my brain started thinking that it will just never happen, and that feeling of hopelessness was very hard to get rid of. Like, I kept on thinking that, oh my god, will I ever see them? It's just this weird panic. I was always panicked, and my coping mechanism is to increase the amount of work I have, which is a terrible idea. And I have always wanted to volunteer for several organizations, and I just started doing that. And then I realized I'm burning out. So it was like very up down, up down, up down, mental health wise. And even now I feel very burnt out every now and then, because I am doing so much. I don't need to do 50% of those things, but I have already
right.
committed to them. So it was very hard because I had no one to share anything with. No one lives close by except for maybe one person. And it was just so messed up. I felt like I am on one side of the mirror, and on the other side are all my family and friends just trapped. And they are actually going through shit, and I am not.
Like for me, I want to add just one more thing. I just realized something, that there are certain things that I don't do in my normal life when there was no COVID. And those things are quite important for me, that I realized during that time. Of course, this continual onslaught of bad news for 2 years is not good for anybody. But, like, for example, I think I was also saying this in the last episode. Me, Shagnik, and Kunal, we started playing PUBG every day. And I am not a gamer. I don't like playing games. It's very difficult for guys to be, like, really be affectionate over phones and stuff, but you could be around each other and show your care and whatever through a game. And that was quite nice. I only did it because we were kind of in this very special circumstance, because we needed different ways to connect to people. And the same way I did with cousins. It took us a pandemic to really realize what things we cherish the most in our lives. And that was very nice for me. I ended up reading much more. I really figured out what things are important in my life and what wasn't. And I think that was necessary. But yeah, continuing that for 2 years is, of course. Anyway, let's move on. And I want to ask you guys, how did you really deal with the issues? For example, Bana, you were telling us that the first month of the lockdown, it was very isolating for you, right? So, what exactly did you do? And if this situation comes up again, how you'll prepare yourself to deal with it better?
So first thing I actually did was to try to reconnect with some friends,
Hmm.
stuff, to try to have these weekly calls with them. It was a way for me to be calm about them and to know that they are okay. And at the same time was a way for me to feel connected with something.
Right.
Because I think at the peak of this March of 2020, I was feeling completely disconnected. Then I started doing a lot of sport because that always helps me, especially running.
Hmm.
And slowly but slowly I got better. But then the problem is that in the summer I almost religiously I go to Portugal.
Right.
And that summer I could not go because Vienna had very strict policy about Portugal. So when came September and I realized that I was not going to Portugal, then my mental health had already a new dump. And then I was again for like 2 weeks in the sofa, just laying down. I could not do anything. I could not focus in my work. But at that point, I was like, okay, this is enough. I'm tired of this. And then I reached to a service that my university has, where they have a psychiatrist, and we can go for 3 sessions for free.
Right.
So I did actually 4 sessions then, but it did help me to go through, although we were not a really good pairing, a really good match. But even though we were not a good match, just these 4 sessions were such a help. I think this is what I would like to stress. You just go, even if you don't find the perfect person, to do therapy with, it may already be helpful.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Anna, and my situation was also similar. I started therapy earlier, but it has been a journey finding the right therapist. I feel like right now I've hit a sweet spot.
Hmm.
It's not perfect, but then which relationship is?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's easier to
Yeah.
have an Indian therapist because she gets it. Because I needed somebody
Right.
who would agree with
Yeah.
the fact that I am moving and consider that as the right decision, because I could not sit there and fight with my therapist because I'm already fighting with everyone else
Right.
about moving back. So yeah, I mean, finding a good therapist was important
Right.
during the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah, we discussed how we were feeling during the initial days of the pandemic. Also, I briefly spoke about how it was during the devastating Delta wave last year, but I want to talk a bit about the effect that it left on us. Like I said, I think it has triggered some sort of underlying anxiety that I already had and I didn't know, and now it is just a bit more pronounced. And I'm still struggling with my mental health on a day-to-day basis. The only thing is that I have recognized more or less the triggers and I'm trying to avoid them. I have recognized what small things I can do to keep myself happy, to keep myself more content, more occupied, more grateful in a way. Even now, 2 out of 7 days I struggle. Anna knows this, my boss knows this, everybody who is close to me, has to work with me, has to deal with me, knows about this. And I just wanted to know how it has been for you guys.
Unfortunately for me, all the years have merged at some point, which I guess many
Mm.
people are also discussing on social media. I have seen people say that on Twitter, and that's where I realized why I'm feeling weird. I'm still struggling a lot. I don't really have coping mechanisms in place, at least not ones which work most of the time. And the
Mm-hmm.
main problem I'm having is just with being. So I'm still overworking a lot. And the days I don't have work, after I come back from work, which pays me, I really don't know what to do with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I know there are a lot of things I can do. I can read, I can just watch something, but I'm constantly anxious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a handle on this yet, is what I want to say.
One thing I realized is that I don't have to make any decisions now. So that's how I took some of the anxiety. I decided that I'll just let things go. I'm in a comfortable position until at least the autumn of this year, like job wise and PhD wise. I don't need to make any decisions about anything. And that took a lot of weight from me. And I accepted now the bad days. I comment this sometimes with Deb, Sometimes when I have a bad day, I just accept it. I do some of what's very hashtag self care,
Yes.
that can be, I go for a cafe or I try to clean my flat because I know that
Hmm.
the next day when I will feel better, I will be able to work better because the flat is clean. I know this sounds very silly, but this works as self
It's
care for
not.
me.
It's not silly.
It's
Yeah.
really
So
not, yeah.
yeah, so I just included this acceptance, I think,
Yeah.
manage my expectations about life in general.
Yeah.
Although I'm always, even with Deb, I'm always kind of saying this. I think, if you're suffering because you're expecting too much, it's kind of good for you to lower your expectations, but
Right.
at the same time, up to some level, So
Yeah.
what I decided is that I will lower these expectations I have about, friendships and about hanging out and up to the end of the year. And then hopefully I will get back to my expectations because I want
Right.
to be happy,
Yeah.
I'll not settle. But
Yeah.
yeah, but for the time being, I lowered expectations and I took out as much decisions as I can,
Yeah.
If I don't need to decide it, I will not decide
Right.
it.
That's a good idea. And just to kind of build on top of that, for me, I always thought and I always plan life in a linear way. I always thought that plan A has to work, after that, we'll do plan B, after that, plan C, and then finally, after like, I don't know, n number of plans, I'll be happy. And then I have slowly started realizing and understanding and implementing the fact that maybe plan A itself will not work as you had planned it to go.
Yeah.
So for that, it's very important to just maybe put it on the side and skip to plan B. Maybe even if B doesn't work, skip to plan C, because there are so many things to do in life. If you just get stuck with one thing and you just think that ultimate goal of happiness is always tied to that first block, then you'll always be blocked by that first step. So that is what I have been trying to do very consciously, so that if today this doesn't work, okay, I will not get anxious about this. I will take this out and focus on the next thing. Because more often than not, what happens is that if the next thing works out, I also feel more motivated to get back to the first thing and look at it in a very different way. So this is what I have been trying. And apart from that, I think just talking about our mental health and making fun of them and like normalizing them has helped me a lot.
One thing I realized from what Anna was saying is that when she said that she has decided not to take certain decisions, I realized I struggle with decision making a lot and I have had to make so many
Hmm.
that I guess I'm just gonna be anxious for a
Yeah.
Right.
while I don't have to take decisions anymore. Like, which job to apply to, do I even bother applying to certain jobs? Things are so different in India. It's like, yeah, one thing after another. No, it's like everything is changing so fast and so much that it's hard to keep track of things right now, which is very hard for me because I love control.
But we have to move on to the recommendation section now. So Ananya, we hear that you have a nice recommendation for us today. Our sources tell us. Sorry.
My recommendation is actually not books or movies. I realize that I'm doing it wrong. I am more interested about food, so I should have food recommendations. So that's
Nice.
what I will go with today. I have been struggling with eating last few months. I have not had any appetite. Like I will feel hungry, but I cannot bring myself to eat. After a flu, how you feel? I have been feeling that
Right.
for like quite a few months. So I decided to just eat whatever comes to my brain. But the effort was also a lot to cook, right? Cooking needs effort.
Hmm.
So I have started experimenting with ramen. It's not healthy, I know, but it's better than not eating anything.
Hmm.
So yeah, I discovered adding miso paste to ramen and it is, oh my god, so good, and it is vegan and I don't feel guilty about eating it, and it needs nothing. It's just so much flavor. So that is like a little, get some miso paste and add it to everything.
I anyway like miso soup. I don't know if it's the same flavor. Is it the
It
same
is the
flavor?
same thing. Yes, it is the
Oh,
same thing. You
okay.
just buy the
Yeah.
paste and don't boil it. That will ruin it. It is a
Ah,
very mellow
okay.
flavor, right? So you can also add it to, I don't know, vegan butter and have it.
I also have a recommendation, something that I've been recommending everybody I've been talking to over the last 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I watched this series called Ted Lasso, and it is just
Oh,
so amazing, so amazing, so
okay.
amazing. It's just like um, I was also kind of going through a phase where I didn't feel like doing anything. I'm going through a reading slump where I cannot read anything. Whatever book I pick up, I cannot read more than 2 or 3 pages. I'm kind of going through same thing with a lot of movies. The movies that I really love, I cannot get myself to watch them anymore. And then I don't know why I randomly started watching Ted Lasso. The premise is very cliched and weird and almost stupid in a way, but the execution is just so amazing, and it has so much heart and warmth, and yeah, and it's just so positive. It's just like annoyingly optimistic at times. It just kind of makes you go into that mood with the series as well, and I'm very glad that I found it during this time.
That reminds me a little bit of Schitt's Creek, actually, right? Oh, you should watch Schitt's Creek too. I mean, it is not annoyingly optimistic, but the ending is just the
Okay.
best, one of the best.
Yeah, okay.
So, and that is on Netflix, and Ted Lasso is on Apple TV, right?
Ted Lasso is on Apple TV, yes. But of course, I don't have Apple TV. I was just like streaming it from a random site. But yeah,
Okay.
um, please go watch Ted Lasso if you can. It is
Mm-hmm.
the most underrated, amazing TV show that I have seen in a while, and not enough people are talking about it. So yeah,
Nice.
go watch Ted Lasso. So that was a
Definitely.
very interesting conversation. We recorded for 1 hour 30 minutes almost. I don't know how we'll make this in an episode, but if it does, and as you are listening to us, that means Ananya has worked her magic, and this has made into an episode. So congratulations to all of us and to you. Uh, this probably is one of the last episodes of the season. So stick with us because we might have something very interesting planned for the last episode. Thank you so much for giving us all the love, and all of us who are also not giving us the love, we still appreciate you guys. Like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're listening there. If you're listening on Spotify, share with your friends. What does it take? Nothing. Just share, dude. And then
Yes,
I
and
don't know.
share your stories with us.
Exactly.
If you wanna come and talk about, I don't know, so this mental health, I guess we'll have more episodes in the second season about this topic.
Yes.
So come and talk to us.
Yes. Tell us about your mental health. Then we'll also feel better about ourselves. I don't know. Maybe you're doing much worse than us. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah.
but anyway,
Yeah.
Yes.
what we mean to say is that we really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much again. Yeah. See you next week. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Hippity hop, I'm as happy as I can be.